It all started last week when I forgot to take my SSRIs. You see, many years ago now, I was diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder, and I was prescribed escitalopram, which you might know better by the brand name Lexapro, in order to regulate it. And I was very much against this idea, but I agreed to try it for a few weeks because my doctor at the time looked like an older Richard Dreyfuss, like a present-day Richard Dreyfuss. And for some reason, that made me really want to please him. Maybe a daddy issue. I don't know. But I took the escitalopram, and much to my chagrin, it was great. It was like I had been living the past few years under constantly overcast skies, and suddenly the sun was out. It's gross, but it's true. So now I have to take one tiny pill every morning. I'm on the lowest dose. But while I usually can do this, I do sometimes just forget. It's usually not a big deal, but this time I forgot for 4 days, which is significant. And that's why I've fallen a little bit behind on my videos this month. Productivity tends to go down when I don't want to get out of bed. So I decided that one of my videos should be about self-care or something, which isn't just relevant to me right now, but to a lot of people who are tired of being quarantined, just because some people don't want to get their free vaccine or wear a goddamn mask. So how do we keep ourselves content or even happy when things are so shitty? And I've definitely tried a lot of things in the name of self-care over the past 2 years. Like, I buy useless things sometimes. I eat too much food sometimes. I drink too much alcohol sometimes, or I sleep too much. But because this is January, which is the month in which I attempt to right the past 2 months of wrongs, I'm not shopping or overeating or drinking any alcohol at all. I know, it's so boring. And so now I have to find new, healthier ways to engage in self-care. But I'm trying. So, I drink a lot of tea. I took a bath. I play video games. I go for hikes. But with this lapse in my meds, it's been way tougher. Like, I can't even think of a video game that would make me happy. That's how I know things are serious. Like, Civ, Minecraft, Overwatch, nothing. My brain is still rebooting. So none of these things will make my brain produce the happy chemicals. But the other day, I found a brand spanking new study called Framing an Intervention is Focused on One's Strength. Does framing enhance therapeutic benefit? I know it doesn't immediately scream, get ready for a dopamine explosion, but stay with me, because it's relevant. The press release title is a little bit more promising. The best way to fix a sad mood? Whatever you think works best. Psychologists at Ohio State University told 616 undergrads about 2 different types of therapy used to treat depression: cognitive therapy and mindfulness. Cognitive therapy is essentially taking a second look at why you feel the way you feel and what assumptions may have led you to feel that way. And then you can try to correct those assumptions in order to feel better. And then hopefully that translates into behaving in a healthier way. I actually invented this. I mean, okay, I wasn't the first, but I absolutely came up with this idea on my own long before I had ever heard it was a real therapeutic intervention. I've talked about it actually in a previous video about the lady pushing the stroller, but I'll give you another example from around that same time. I was in Boston. I was waiting for a subway train after a long day of work. The train pulls up, the doors open, and this lady just shoves past me so that she could squeeze onto the train first. And I was furious. But then I stopped and I tried to figure out, like, why was I so angry? It's because I assumed she was just a giant bitch. But then I thought, well, you know what? Maybe she's been standing all day long at her job and desperately needs a seat. Maybe she has some disability and needs a seat. Maybe she's just had a really bad day. Maybe she's been waiting for a few trains that were too full and she couldn't get on, and she was desperate to get on this one last train. And all of that made me less angry because also she didn't hurt me and I was still able to get on the train. So why was I so angry? And all of that made me less angry. I felt better about everything and I went home. So that's cognitive therapy. The other one is mindfulness, which it's not diametrically opposed to cognitive therapy. It's just a little different. So mindfulness is all about paying close attention to everything that's happening around you and how you are feeling in the moment and why you are feeling that way without necessarily trying to change your feelings, just kind of validating them. It's a little bit more meditative, like I'm angry and that's understandable and okay because I've had a really long day and I'm tired and that person was just rude to me. But there's also all this other stuff going on, like how I'm on my way home to see my cats, or I'm having dinner with a friend later on tonight. And look over there, there's a family that's visiting from another country. Life is pretty good. So the researchers explain these two different types of ways to deal with negative emotions. And then they had the subjects practice each one after imagining a sad thought. They then told each student that they were better at one of those two techniques, but in reality, the researchers just randomly picked which of the two techniques to talk up to the subject. Finally, they made each student sad, and we'll talk about that more in a second. And then they told half of them to use cognitive and the other half to use mindfulness to feel better. Both techniques were equally good at making the subjects feel better. But the subjects had more success when they used whichever technique they were randomly told that they were better at. Even though they weren't actually better at it, it was a filthy lie. So what's all this mean? Well, the whole point of the study wasn't really about how to feel less sad. It was about how powerful framing can be when used in therapy. If someone thinks they're good at something, that something might be more effective for them. Positive mental attitude is a real thing. The downside for me learning about this is realizing that when I'm trapped in a depressive cycle due to a malfunctioning brain, it's tough to just make myself believe that I can think my way out of it because I'm good at that. Even if I really could think my way out of it. It's the catch-22 of depression. Just like how, exercise can make depressed people feel better, but a depressed person getting together the energy to exercise requires some kind of force of nature. Or it requires a very stubborn and obnoxious puppy dog who has become accustomed to a hike every day. Anyway, I don't know, maybe someone out there will watch this and this will somehow help them, even if it wasn't a huge help to me. So this concludes the new science portion of today's video. But if I'm being honest, that one small study is not why I decided to go ahead and make this video. I decided to make this into a video because this study, when combined with my broken brain, made me fall down a rabbit hole. And I spent so long at the bottom exploring that I am mentally incapable of making a video about anything else. There's just no time left. Let me describe how I spent my week. Remember how I said the researchers made the subjects feel sad? Do you want to know how? So did I. Turns out they had the subjects imagine a loved one dying, but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to feel sad because their loved one is not actually dying. So in order to really rub in the sadness, the researchers played the subjects a sad song while they thought of their loved one dying. The specific song they chose was a song titled Russia Under the Mongolian Yoke, played at half speed. What? What the fuck is Russia Under the Mongolian Yoke? I asked myself, because I'm not a cultured person. So I went out looking, and it turns out that it is a song written for Sergei Eisenstein's 1938 film Alexander Nevsky, about the titular Russian prince who successfully fought off a 13th century invasion by Teutonic Knights of the Holy Roman Empire. The film's score was written by Sergei Prokofiev, who Western audiences might know better as the guy who wrote Peter and the Wolf. The film was so popular that he turned the score into a 40-minute cantata, which opens with Russia Under the Mongol Yoke, an orchestral piece that begins in C minor, apparently to represent the destruction wrought by the Mongols when they invaded Russia in 1237, as they destroyed several major cities, including Moscow. Sorry, I'm learning all of this for the first time. The only thing I knew about all of this prior was learned from the game Civilization, which no longer brings me happy chemicals in my brain. So instead, I have to spend several days reading Wikipedia pages. Anyway, so I found this piece and I listened to it. And then I listened to it again at half speed. And okay, sure, I guess it's sad. But is it sadder than, like, Celine Dion singing All By Myself? Not that I could tell, but apparently psychologists at some point decided that this is the sad song to play at half speed if you want to get people depressed. Why? I didn't know, so obviously I had to start reading psychology papers that used it. The earliest I could find with a quick Google Scholar search was from 1993, but they don't explain why they used it. So I checked another paper from 1999, and I found that they cited a paper from 1990 called On the Induction of Mood, which references several studies from as early as 1983 that used the song to good effect. But none of those studies specifically mention the song they use or why they chose it. So I emailed the author of most of those papers from the 1980s, a man named Professor David M. Clark of University of Oxford, to find out if he knew why this particular song was considered so sad. While awaiting his reply, I searched around for papers on what makes a song sad. And first, I found that researchers at UC Berkeley recently concluded that sad music was universally sad. But then I read the study and I saw that they only surveyed Americans and Chinese subjects on mostly Western hits, which that's not universal. Like, Chinese citizens have easy access to Western music. They've definitely heard these songs before. So I searched some more until I found a better study published last summer in which researchers played sad Western music to two completely remote tribes in Pakistan who had very little to no interaction or knowledge of such music. They found that those tribes tended to not really like happy Western music, which is music that is played in major chords. They actually preferred what we tend to think of as sad songs with minor keys, probably because in their own culture, most songs, including happy songs, are played in minor keys more often. So, sad music, not universal. Even if Russia Under the Mongolian Yoke is the saddest song in Russia or the UK or the US, it's not necessarily so sad in Pakistan or other places. Anyway, as of this recording, I haven't heard back from Professor Clark, which is understandable because he's probably got an email filter for, like, people off their meds. But I promise that if I hear back, I will let you know immediately over on my Patreon. But in conclusion, if you're on pills that control your depression and anxiety, please remember to take them every day. Or you too may get obsessed with an obscure early 20th century cantata movement and its use to science. That's the anxiety. And then you may end up slightly sadder because you spent the past 2 days of research listening to said movement at half speed to figure out if it'll make you sad. And that's the depression. So stay on your meds, kids.